Okay, so I am also going to be super ambitious and post chapter 33 as well with my wonderful cold. So hopefully I won't get any of the names wrong this time or say Shine instead of Shan. So here's chapter 33. Song of Mornius, chapter 33. Galen frowned, his focus on Avalar. She strode beside the ice-choked river, pausing at intervals in the deep snow. He watched her mutter to herself, saw her gesture urgently to empty air, as if begging invisible forces to flee. Gripping Mornius, Galen paddle-footed alongside Virgen and Silva over the snow. Tarek, seeing his approach, finished flicking snow from the cups of his Shan's inner hoof, and stood, releasing the creature's leg. "You look exhausted," Tarek said. Galen shambled to a stop in front of the little shaggy beast. "At least there's no wind." He moved to stand alongside the Shan's lowered neck, burying his fingers in its stiff, bristled mane. Behind him the others waited, their gazes on the forest and their growing hope for a place to camp for the night. Tarek, reaching out, gripped his wrist and turned him where he stood. "Look," he said. Galen stared at his friend. Then, with a single hard flex of his gloved fingers, Tarek compelled his gaze forward. "See the giant? She hasn't been herself since you healed Virgen. Why did you touch her, warder? You know how dangerous that is. Was it because—" Tarek glanced toward his men, lowered his voice. "Did you need her magic to heal him? Is that it?" Galen felt the shift inside as Halram roused in response to the question. With a calm certainty Galen did not feel, Halram met Tarek's glower. "She was never in danger, Tarek Florn. And yes, I need her to restore Wielermen. It is because of my need to touch the world that I crafted my staff." "I thank you for restoring Captain Virgen to himself," said Tarek. "He has been a good friend to my father." Halram, with effort, compelled Galen to shrug. "It was nothing. I am a warder, Tarek Florn. Such things as recognition or gratitude mean little to me." "Good, then know this." Tarek stood rigid, facing the warder. "Avalar Mistivir suffered injury trying to save my brother. That makes her family. But even if she wasn't, she's still my responsibility. Next time you feel like endangering her or any of my people, you consult me first." Halram blinked hard to clear Galen's vision. He nodded, then gestured to the giant. "Avalar walks among her own people now," he said. "Her people from the past. All the history of her long bloodline is stored within her brain. This land triggers the very worst of those memories. Many giants died here. The deaths they experienced, she shall experience. Perhaps she will see them. Perhaps she will feel them." Virgen, working on the hooves of another nearby Shan, whistled softly. Tarek stamped his feet to rouse his toes. Shivering hard, he shifted from foot to foot. "What can I do? How do I help her?" "Have patience," said Halram. "Forbear." He watched as Avalar turned. With massive strides the giant plowed through the drifts toward them, her face red with effort, her unfocused blue eyes confused. "Leader Tarek!" Avalar called. She stopped before them. Her blonde hair, escaped from her braids, dripped with melted snow. Tarek opened his mouth and then hesitated. "Your ghost," said Avalar. "I desire his counsel. He alone may comprehend what happened here. Leader Tarek, where is he?" Avalar wheeled before he could answer. Glaring through the snow, she scanned the contours of the soft white drifts, the beckoning shadows of the trees beyond. "Have you sheathed his weapon?" she asked. "Have you shut him away from me?" "No." Striding forward, Tarek caught her wrist and hauled against it. With obvious effort, he dragged her around to face him. "No, Avalar," he said firmly. "I freed him, remember? His sword I keep wrapped in my bedroll for safekeeping. Only his scabbard is gone." "Then why?" She broke free and swung back to face the woods, her strong hands clenching at her sides. "Why is he missing?" "Easy, giant. If I knew I would tell you, but he will return, of course." Horum stepped beside her. Tipping back his head, he met her fierce glare. "He has to. Leader Tarek has his sword." She stood still, staring like a raka caught in a snare. With both hands, Tarek pulled at her clenched fingers, pulled hard to regain her attention. She whirled back around all at once, her braid whipping as she turned. Tarek paused for a moment, calmly waited for her focus to clear. "Avalar, I need you to walk ahead toward those trees and pack down the snow for the Shan, so the rest of us can ride them. Find where the drifts are shallow, like you did before. Can you do that for me?" Horum nodded approval. Good, he thought. Give her something to do. He waited. The young giant's inner struggle shredded his heart. He watched her face clench with indecision. She glanced to the river, eyes flinching quickly away again in fear. Almost Horum could imagine her thoughts. The giants could be killed, torn to pieces as if they had no worth. Horum found himself yearning to enter her mind as he could with Galen, to help her understand all that was long ago. Even prowlers would fight to the death now to keep a giant safe. "I will do it," she answered gravely. After a pause, she cleared her throat, eyes luminous as she gazed at her leader. Without a word, she pushed herself into motion, stomping down hard as she plowed through the snow in the direction Tarek had pointed. Horum watched her young back. Then he met Tarek's grim concern. "Send her home," Vurgen said softly from beside the Shan. "I've been there. I've seen where we're going. Tarek, it'll only get worse from here. You're asking her to go where her people were." "I know!" Tarek snarled the words. "And I'm not asking any such thing. The giant is here because it's what she wants, and it's what she is. Would you like it if I sent you home?" "Hell yes!" Grinning, Vurgen nodded toward the woods. "One good meal, one hot bath. It's all I ask. Then I'd be back. But I am a fool, Commander. I still like to think we can win this thing." "Malian planned this from the start," said Horum. "His one threat, other than myself, would be the giants who defend this world. Get rid of the giants, that was his plan, and it almost worked. He feeds on destruction, Tarek Florn. He has discovered that death of flesh is easy for him, far easier than the slaying of stars." Tarek turned. His gaze lowered to meet Horum's stare from behind Galen's surrendered eyes. "Hear me well, warder. This is one giant he isn't going to kill. Not while I live and breathe. On this you have my word." Horum nodded. Seeing the others starting forward, he limped in his snow paddles back to Tarek's Shan, and then bent, clumsily using Galen's fingers to unbind the paddles from his boots. Then he attempted to mount with a body that was not his. Wet leather abraded his thighs, made lifting his legs to the stirrup impossible. He forced his arms to do the work, to haul himself up. The shaggy beast, disgusted by his efforts, lashed its tough tail and squealed. He scrambled on at last, clinging to the bristled mane with both fists, tipping the hard leather of his heels as far as possible from the Shan's snow-encrusted ribs. He saw Tarek far ahead, striding quickly after the giant in the path she created with her feet. Vurgen hung back, his Shan chest-deep in the falling snow. As Horum pulled abreast of him, the captain seized his reins from his hand. "You," said Vurgen softly, "are not ready for this. I've seen how he throws his power around. He has nothing to lose except his prison holding him here." "You have not beheld the Warder of Light in full strength," said Horum. "Just as Malian is strengthened by destroying life, I am strengthened by restoring life. I have been rather busy during your absence, Morant Vurgen. I am stronger now than you know." Silently Virgin nudged his shan forward, turning his head as he did so to retain Halram's gaze. Halram stared back as the captain's green eyes scrutinized his warder's soul. "I know you healed me," Virgin said softly, "but nevertheless you're as lethal to us all as he is." At that Halram grimaced as he gathered up his reins. "I am," he agreed softly. "For your sake you must get rid of us both." Virgin rode on without hearing, Tarek's cloak fanning out from his rigid shoulders. Halram followed more slowly, his shan plodding over the giant-packed snow. He rode with his thoughts turned inward, mulling over the captain's unforgiving words. "All these friends," he whispered. He glanced up and squinted as the snowfall thickened, tumbling down from a gray fist of clouds. How he longed to see beyond it to the clear, unfettered sky. Thunder rumbled above and around him. Blindly Halram rode with his head tipped back, his spirit reaching from the confines of human flesh to the arms of vapor he could not touch. He knew fog and cold and emptiness, had lived in its grasp for all that had been his long life. Above all else, it had taught him patience. Under the snow he was willing to wait, rocking slowly and forever on his wide-backed little beast. He felt hands catch his reins, prodding his creature under the shelter of ice-heavy branches. He felt himself being lifted. Someone gripped him, helped him tottering and shambling to sit beside a crackling fire. He saw faces, Tarek's and Ross and Dren Abrams too, as the young man knelt to wrap him in a blanket. Halram gripped the wool, hugging it to himself. Shivering, he hunched forward to stare at the fire so much like the innards of a sun. He raised his head. Across the fire, Avalar crouched down, extending her hands to meet the fire's warmth. "My father says giants are free," Avalar whispered. "That even by staying on Hathra we protect the world. But this is falsehood, a delusion I cannot accept. No one is free in a burning forest, so we either flee it or we fight it. To survive we must." "Yes." Halram felt Galen shiver beneath his blanket. He too nodded at the flames, the old magic he could not touch without Galen's help. To run from it is not an option. All you can do is fight. "Malian has grown stronger," Halram said bitterly. "The closer I get to his demism, the more keenly I feel it." Halram watched the giant. She sat on her parka with her fur-wrapped knees crossed, her quiet gaze locked with his. As Halram waited, Virgin stepped into view, an iron pot swinging heavily in his grasp, filled with broth for a stew. Virgin's brow furrowed as he prodded at the fire with a stick. Then he placed the flame-blackened vessel among the brands. "Morant Virgin understands better than anyone." Halram nodded at the captain's quick glance. "He has witnessed the perversion that is Malian. His heart still bears the scars. Ask him, Tarek Florin. Ask your captain what he remembers, for you must understand fully before you dare lay your trust with any warder." Tarek was silent. All was silent but the low crackle of the flames and the soft whisper of snowflakes hitting the drifts. "Are you saying we shouldn't trust you?" he asked finally. Across the fire, Avalar exploded to her feet. Before Halram could dodge, she was on him, seizing him by the front of his tunic, hauling him into the air. Red-faced, she shook him hard, shook him until he fell limp with dismay in her grasp. "Hear me!" She snarled the words in his face, her angry gaze like a spike driving through him. "This talk skills nothing, and I am tired of it. You are a warder. I am a giant. We will both try the best we can. That's all we can do. You will not harm the circle. I have seen it, and I do trust." Just as roughly, she set him down. At once her big hand clasped his shoulder, steadying him on his feet. "Fear not!" she thundered. Halram shivered under the weight of her glare. Tarek was on his feet. prying the giant's hand loose. His mouth was stern as her fingers came free. "Avalar," he admonished softly, "I don't think Halram is questioning our trust. I just think—" Trembling, Halram sank down. The smell of broth triggered a rolling reaction deep within, a rhythmic clenching of muscle he could not stop. Helpless, he gagged as a vile taste flooded his mouth. Then he was heaving violently, spewing the meager contents of his stomach over the snow. "What?" Helpless, he gasped between spasms. "What is wrong?" Hands held his shoulders. "Nothing's wrong," Tarek said from behind him. "You're just ill, Galen." Deliberately, Tarek invoked Galen's name, his meaning clear, and Halram, with a sigh, unclenched his hold. "Galen?" Tarek was crouching now, turning him back to the fire, handing him a handful of snow to clean his mouth. Trembling, Galen gathered himself and stood. "I need to rest," he said softly, wiping his mouth. "I'm so tired, Tarek." He blinked hard to clear his vision. "When I healed Virgen, Pressure mounted in his forehead, ached in the bones around his eyes. "Halram lighted all his power within me, all his power through me. Not Mornius. He focused with his staff, but he lighted all his power." With a sigh, he let himself go, falling forward into Tarek's strong grasp.